Hindu Kush Mountains, Afghanistan, June 28, 2005. The sun climbed slowly over the jagged peaks, casting long shadows across the treacherous terrain. At 10,000 feet above sea level, 4 Navy SEALs lay hidden among the rocks and sparse vegetation, their eyes scanning the valley below. The air was thin, cold, and unforgiving. They had been inserted under the cover of darkness, dropped into enemy territory with a single mission: locate and eliminate a high-value Taliban leader named Ahmad Shah. But something had gone terribly wrong. 3 Afghan goat herders had stumbled upon their position. The SEALs faced an impossible choice: execute unarmed civilians to protect their mission, or let them go and risk certain death. After a heated debate, they made a decision that would seal their fate. They let the herders go free. Within an hour, the mountains erupted with gunfire. Hundreds of Taliban fighters emerged from every direction, surrounding the 4 Americans with overwhelming force. Trapped on a mountainside with nowhere to run, the SEALs prepared for the fight of their lives. Among them was a 29-year-old Navy SEAL medic from Texas, a man who had trained his entire life for this moment. His name was Marcus Luttrell. What happened over the next several hours would become one of the most brutal battles in modern warfare. A battle where 3 brothers would make the ultimate sacrifice. A battle where one man would survive against impossible odds. And a battle that would forever change the meaning of courage, loyalty, and the unbreakable bond of brotherhood. This is the story of Marcus Luttrell, the lone survivor. Before he became the lone survivor, Marcus Luttrell was just a kid from Texas with big dreams and an even bigger heart. Born on November 7, 1975, in Houston, Texas, Marcus grew up on a ranch with his identical twin brother Morgan. Their father was a Vietnam War veteran who had instilled in his sons a deep love for their country and an unwavering work ethic. Life on the ranch was tough. Marcus and Morgan woke up before dawn every day to feed 70 horses, stack hay bales in the scorching Texas heat, and handle whatever other chores needed doing. It wasn't glamorous, but it built character. It built resilience. It built men who refused to quit. From an early age, Marcus knew he wanted to be a warrior. His father told him stories about an elite group of soldiers called Navy SEALs, warriors who operated in the most dangerous places on earth, who never quit, who never left a brother behind. Marcus was captivated. He wanted to be one of them. But there was a problem. Marcus was small. Throughout most of his childhood and teenage years, he was short and underweight. Other kids towered over him. Coaches overlooked him. But Marcus didn't care what others thought. He had a fire burning inside him that no one could extinguish. At just 14 years old, Marcus and Morgan made a decision that would change their lives forever. They approached a neighbor, a retired Green Beret named Billy Shelton, and asked him to train them. Billy was a hard man, a warrior who understood what it took to become a Navy SEAL, and he agreed to help. What followed was years of brutal training. While other teenagers were playing video games and hanging out at the mall, Marcus and Morgan were running miles through the Texas countryside, lifting weights until their muscles screamed, learning martial arts and pushing their bodies beyond every limit. Billy Shelton was relentless, driving them harder than they thought possible. But Marcus never complained. He never quit. The training paid off. During his late teens, Marcus hit a growth spurt, shooting up to over 6 feet tall. His body, hardened by years of grueling preparation, transformed into that of a warrior. By the time he graduated from Willis High School in Conroe, Texas, Marcus Luttrell was ready. In 1998, Marcus enrolled at Sam Houston State University to study international business. But his heart wasn't in the classroom. His heart was on the battlefield. After just 1 year, he made the decision. He dropped out of college and enlisted in the United States Navy. It was March 1999. Marcus Luttrell was 23 years old, and his journey to becoming a Navy SEAL had officially begun. Navy SEAL training is designed to break men. It's called Basic Underwater Demolition / SEAL training, or BUD/S, and it has one of the highest dropout rates of any military program in the world. The instructors don't want you to succeed. They want you to quit. They want to see if you have what it takes to become part of the most elite fighting force on the planet. Marcus Luttrell started Bud S with Class 226 in Coronado, California. The training was everything he expected and worse. Days began before sunrise with freezing ocean swims, followed by endless runs in wet, sand-filled boots. There were log drills where teams carried massive telephone poles for miles. There was surf torture, where candidates sat in the freezing Pacific Ocean until their bodies went numb. And there was Hell Week, 5.5 days of continuous training with a total of 4 hours of sleep. But Marcus had been preparing for this his entire life. While other candidates rang the bell and quit, Marcus pushed forward. He refused to give in. He refused to break. Then disaster struck. During training, Marcus fractured his femur, one of the strongest bones in the human body. The injury was severe enough to disqualify most candidates permanently. But Marcus wasn't most candidates. He fought through months of painful rehabilitation, refusing to let his dream die. And when he was medically cleared, he returned to Buds with Class 228. In February 2001, Marcus Luttrell graduated from Buds and earned his Navy SEAL Trident. But he wasn't done. He immediately went on to receive advanced medical training, becoming a SEAL team medic or corpsman. His job would be to save lives under fire, to patch up his brothers in the middle of combat, to be their lifeline when everything went to hell. Marcus was assigned to SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 1, based out of Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. He was living his dream. He was a Navy SEAL, and soon the world would need him. On September 11, 2001, the world changed. Marcus watched in horror as the Twin Towers fell in New York City. Like millions of Americans, he felt rage, grief, and an overwhelming desire for justice. The global war on terror had begun, and Marcus Luttrell was ready to fight. In April 2003, Marcus deployed to Iraq with SEAL Team 5 as part of Operation Iraqi Freedom. His missions were classified, dangerous, and critical. The SEALs operated behind enemy lines, gathering intelligence, capturing high-value targets, and eliminating threats. Marcus saw combat, he saw death, and he proved himself as a warrior. But it was his next deployment that would test him beyond anything he could imagine. In March 2005, Marcus deployed to Bagram Airfield in Afghanistan with SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 1. The mission was clear: hunt down Taliban leaders in the mountains of northeastern Afghanistan and disrupt their operations. Afghanistan was unlike Iraq. The terrain was brutal, unforgiving mountains where the enemy held every advantage. The Taliban knew every trail, every cave, every hiding spot, and they were willing to die for their cause. Marcus and his team conducted reconnaissance missions, moving under the cover of darkness, gathering intelligence on enemy positions. It was exhausting, dangerous work, but it was what they trained for. It was what they lived for. And then came June 2005. Marcus and his SEAL brothers received orders for a mission that would change everything. The mission was called Operation Red Wings. The target? A Taliban commander named Ahmad Shah, a terrorist responsible for the deaths of countless coalition forces and Afghan civilians. Marcus Luttrell and 3 other SEALs would be inserted into the mountains to locate Shah and relay his position for a follow-up strike. It seems straightforward, but in the mountains of Afghanistan, nothing is ever straightforward. On June 27, 2005, Marcus Luttrell boarded his brother in the darkness of night. Everything was about to change. Late in the night of June 27, 2005, 2 MH-47 Chinook helicopters roared through the darkness towards Sautal Sar, a mountain peak in the Hindu Kush Range 1 helicopter, performed decoy drops to mislead any enemy observers. The other inserted a 4-man SEAL team via fast rope into a saddle between 2 peaks. The team consisted of 4 warriors: Lieutenant Michael P. Murphy, the team leader from Long Island, New York, a natural leader who inspired everyone around him; Petty Officer 2nd Class Danny Dietz from Colorado, a fearless operator with nerves of steel; Petty Officer 2nd Class Matthew Axelson from California, a quiet professional who never backed down from a fight; and Hospital Corpsman 2nd Class Marcus Luttrell, the team medic from Texas. They hit the ground and immediately disappeared into the darkness, moving silently through the treacherous terrain. Their mission was reconnaissance and surveillance. Locate Ahmad Shah. Report his position. Get out alive. As the sun rose on June 28th, the SEALs established an observation post on the side of a steep mountain overlooking Shah's suspected location. The terrain was terrible for concealment. Sparse vegetation, rocky outcrops, and steep cliffs made it nearly impossible to hide. But they had no choice. Hours passed. The SEALs remained motionless, scanning the valley below through their optics. And then, disaster struck. The jingling of bells echoed through the mountains. Marcus looked up and saw them, a group of Afghan goat herders with about 100 goats, walking directly toward their position. The SEALs froze. They had been compromised. Within moments, the herders were standing right in front of them. 3 unarmed Afghan men staring at 4 heavily armed Navy SEALs. The SEALs quickly detained them, but now they faced an impossible decision. Lieutenant Murphy gathered his team. They had 3 options: kill the herders to protect the mission, tie them up and leave them, which would likely result in their deaths from exposure or wild animals, or let them go and risk the herders alerting the Taliban. The debate was heated. Axelson and Dietz argued for killing them. It was a tactical decision. If the herders warned the Taliban, the 4 SEALs would be outnumbered and surrounded. But Murphy and Luttrell hesitated. These were unarmed civilians. Killing them would be murder. Marcus Luttrell cast the deciding vote. "We gotta let them go," he said. His Christian faith, his sense of honor, wouldn't allow him to execute unarmed men in cold blood. The herders were released. The SEALs immediately repositioned, knowing they had minutes at most before the Taliban arrived. Marcus felt it in his gut. They had just signed their own death warrant. He was right. About an hour after releasing the herders, the mountains exploded with gunfire. Taliban fighters emerged from 3 sides, armed with AK-47s, RPK machine guns, and RPG-7 rocket-propelled grenades. The SEALs were outnumbered at least 10 to 1. Possibly more. Estimates would later range from 30 to over 100 enemy fighters. The firefight was immediate and brutal. Bullets slammed into the rocks around them. RPGs exploded, sending shrapnel in every direction. The SEALs returned fire, their training taking over, but they were pinned down with nowhere to run. Lieutenant Murphy made the call. They had to move. Staying in place meant certain death. The team began fighting their way down the mountain, using the terrain for cover. But the Taliban had the high ground in superior numbers. The terrain was as deadly as the enemy. Steep cliffs, loose rocks, and thick vegetation made every step treacherous. The SEALs tumbled, fell, and rolled hundreds of feet down the mountainside, their bodies slamming into rocks and trees. Marcus felt his spine crack as he hit a boulder. Pain shot through his body, but he kept fighting. Danny Dietz was hit, then hit again. His right thumb was blown off, but he kept firing his weapon, protecting his brothers. Matthew Axelson took multiple rounds but refused to fall. Lieutenant Murphy was wounded but continued to lead, calling out targets, rallying his men. For 2 hours, the 4 SEALs fought with everything they had. They moved through a hellish landscape of cliffs and ravines, bleeding, broken, but still fighting. Marcus was hit in the leg. Shrapnel tore into his body. His vertebrae were cracked, but he wouldn't quit. And then Lieutenant Murphy made a decision that would earn him the Medal of Honor. Realizing they couldn't call for help from their current position due to the mountains blocking their radio signal, Murphy deliberately exposed himself to enemy fire. He walked out into the open, onto a rock outcropping where he could get a satellite signal and placed a call for help. The Taliban fighters saw him immediately and opened fire. Murphy was hit multiple times but stayed on the line long enough to relay their position before collapsing. His sacrifice would ultimately save Marcus Luttrell's life. Minutes later, Danny Dietz was killed. Then Matthew Axelson fell. Marcus watched his brothers die, one by one, until only he and Lieutenant Murphy remained. And then, in the final moments of the firefight, Murphy was killed. Marcus Luttrell was alone. An RPG explosion blasted him over a ridge, knocking him unconscious. When he woke up, the firing had stopped. He was at the bottom of a ravine, barely able to move. He had a bullet wound in his leg, shrapnel embedded throughout his body, 3 cracked vertebrae, and he could barely see through the blood covering his face. Marcus Luttrell should have died that day, but he didn't. He had made a promise to his brothers to never quit, and he intended to keep it. Marcus crawled. He crawled through the mountains for hours, every movement agony, every breath a struggle. He was dehydrated, bleeding, and in shock, Taliban fighters were hunting him, searching the area for survivors. He hid in crevices, under rocks, anywhere he could fit his broken body. For nearly a day, Marcus evaded capture. He moved at night, hiding during the day. His body was shutting down, but his mind refused to give up. He thought about his brothers. He thought about his family. He thought about Billy Shelton, his trainer, who had taught him that quitting was not an option. And then, on the second day, Marcus saw them. Afghan villagers from a nearby settlement called Sabre. Marcus didn't know if they were friend or foe. He raised his weapon, prepared to fight one last time. But the villagers didn't attack. Instead, they helped him. The man who found Marcus was named Muhammad Gulab, a Pashtun tribesman. Gulab invoked an ancient Pashtun code of honor called Pashtunwali, which demands that a person provide asylum and protection to someone in need. Even at the cost of one's own life, Gulab looked at the broken, bleeding American SEAL and made a decision. He would protect him. Gulab and the villagers carried Marcus back to Sabre, a dangerous journey through Taliban-controlled territory. They brought him to a small house and began treating his wounds with whatever limited medical supplies they had. Marcus was delirious with pain, drifting in and out of consciousness. But he knew one thing. These people were risking their lives to save him, and they were. The Taliban learned that an American was being sheltered in Sabre and attacked the village. Gulab and the other villagers fought back, protecting Marcus with their own weapons. For 3 days, the villagers held off Taliban fighters while Marcus lay helpless inside the house. Gulab knew they needed help. He wrote a note explaining the situation and had another villager carry it to a nearby U.S. Marine outpost. The villagers also placed an emergency beacon in the window of the house where Marcus was being kept, a signal for American forces. On July 2, 2005, 4 days after the ambush, U.S. Army Rangers launched a massive rescue operation. They fought their way into Sabre, secured the area, and found Marcus Luttrell. He was barely alive, but he was alive. As the Rangers carried him to the extraction helicopter, Marcus looked back at Muhammad Gulab, the Afghan man who had risked everything to save an American. He didn't know Marcus would never forget him. But the cost of Operation Red Wings was devastating. 3 of the 4 SEALs on the ground had been killed. Lieutenant Michael Murphy, Petty Officer Danny Dietz, and Petty Officer Matthew Axelson. And the tragedy didn't end there. When Lieutenant Murphy's distress call went out on June 28th, a quick reaction force was immediately dispatched. 16 Special Operations warriors, 8 Navy SEALs, and 8 Army Night Stalker aviators from the 161st Special Operations Aviation Regiment boarded an MH-47 Chinook helicopter and flew into the mountains to rescue the trapped SEAL team. But as the Chinook approached the landing zone, a Taliban fighter fired an RPG-7. The rocket-propelled grenade struck the helicopter, causing catastrophic damage. The Chinook crashed into the mountainside, killing all 16 men on board instantly. In total, 19 American warriors died during Operation Red Wings. It was the single largest loss of life for naval special warfare since World War II. And it was the worst single-day death toll for U.S. forces since the war in Afghanistan began. Marcus Luttrell was the lone survivor, and he carried the weight of 19 brothers on his shoulders. Marcus was evacuated to Bagram Airfield, then to Germany, and finally back to the United States. His injuries were catastrophic. Bullet wounds, shrapnel embedded throughout his body, 3 cracked vertebrae, and psychological trauma that would haunt him for years. The physical recovery took months. Marcus underwent multiple surgeries, grueling physical therapy, and endless rehabilitation. There were days when the pain was so intense he wanted to quit, but he didn't. He couldn't. He had survived for a reason, and he owed it to his fallen brothers to keep fighting. In 2007, President George W. Bush awarded Marcus Luttrell the Navy Cross, the second highest military decoration for valor in combat. The citation praised his extraordinary heroism, his unwavering courage, and his absolute devotion to his teammates. Lieutenant Michael Murphy was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest military decoration. Petty Officers Danny Dietz and Matthew Axelson were awarded the Navy Cross, but medals couldn't bring them back, and Marcus struggled with survivor's guilt. Why had he lived when his brothers died? What made him special? The questions tortured him. After recovering, Marcus returned to duty. In 2006, he deployed to Ramadi, Iraq with SEAL Team 5. He wanted to honor his fallen brothers by continuing to serve, but his body had been pushed beyond its limits. During his deployment, he suffered additional injuries to his knees and spine. By 2007, his body could no longer handle the demands of being a Navy SEAL. Marcus Luttrell was medically discharged from the United States Navy. His career as a SEAL was over, but his mission to honor his brothers was just beginning. In 2007, Marcus co-wrote a book with author Patrick Robinson titled Lone Survivor, the eyewitness account of Operation Red Wing and the lost heroes of SEAL Team 10. The book was a raw, unflinching account of Operation Red Wings, told from Marcus's perspective. It detailed the impossible choices his team faced, the brutal firefight, and the unimaginable courage of his brothers. The book became an instant bestseller, selling over 1 million copies. It resonated with millions of people around the world who were inspired by the story of sacrifice, brotherhood, and survival. Marcus wasn't writing the book for fame or money. He was writing it to make sure the world never forgot Michael Murphy, Danny Dietz, and Matthew Axelson. In 2013, the book was adapted into a major Hollywood film directed by Peter Berg and starring Mark Wahlberg as Marcus Luttrell. The film, also titled Lone Survivor, brought the story to an even wider audience. Marcus appeared in the film in several cameo roles, including as one of the SEALs aboard the doomed Chinook helicopter. But Marcus's greatest contribution came in 2010 when he established the Lone Survivor Foundation. The foundation's mission is to restore, empower, and renew hope for wounded warriors and their families through health, wellness, and therapeutic support. Since its creation, the foundation has helped hundreds of veterans struggling with physical injuries, PTSD, and the challenges of transitioning back to civilian life. Marcus also dedicated himself to ensuring that Mohammed Gulab, the Afghan villager who saved his life, was protected. Gulab faced constant Taliban threats and retaliation for helping an American. After years of effort, Marcus successfully helped Gulab and his family relocate to the United States, where they could live in safety. Today, Marcus Luttrell lives on a ranch in Texas with his wife Melanie and their children. He named his first son Axe after his fallen brother Matthew Axelson. He continues to speak publicly about his experiences, advocating for veterans and sharing the lessons he learned on that mountainside in Afghanistan. Marcus Luttrell's story is not just about survival, it's about loyalty, it's about honor. It's about the unbreakable bonds forged between warriors who fight, bleed, and die for each other. Marcus survived Operation Red Wings, not because he was stronger or smarter than his brothers, but because fate allowed him one more day to tell their story. And he has dedicated every day since to making sure the world remembers. Lieutenant Michael P. Murphy, Petty Officer Danny Dietz, Petty Officer Matthew Axelson, and the 16 warriors who died trying to save them. Marcus Luttrell often quotes the Navy SEAL creed, "I will never quit. My nation expects me to be physically harder and mentally stronger than my enemies. If knocked down, I will get back up every time. I will draw on every remaining ounce of strength to protect my teammates and to accomplish our mission. I am never out of the fight." On June 28, 2005, 4 Navy SEALs lived that creed. 3 of them gave everything. 1 survived to tell their story. Marcus Luttrell is not a hero because he survived. He's a hero because he refuses to let his brothers be forgotten. And as long as he lives, their sacrifice will never fade from memory. This is the story of the lone survivor. But it's also the story of the brothers who stood beside him, who fought beside him, and who died beside him, and their legacy will live forever.